Okay, perfect. Well, Randy, thank you for coming on the HEADCHECK podcast today. Super excited to have you here with your extensive knowledge, especially in football. So I'm just going to open things up and let you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up. I know we just had a little bit of preamble before this. But then tell us how you first got involved with sport and junior football.
Okay, well, thanks, Maddie. So my name is Randy O'Shaughnessy. I have been involved with amateur sports going back to, I believe, my first hockey team I played on. I was 4 years old. My roots in Saskatchewan start. My parents' family was from Montmartre, Saskatchewan, which is about 75 kilometers southeast of Regina. Moved to Regina when before I was born, but spent my life growing up in Regina and the sports community in a small little section of Regina called Eastview, where hockey was everything. We grew up across from an outdoor rink, and that little field in the summertime, the outdoor rink was a football field, and in the wintertime, of course, was a hockey rink. And so that's how I got started, just by proximity to a good old-fashioned outdoor hockey rink. I guess it would be called an activity field now, multi-purpose field. Grew up being a hockey player, cheering for Montreal Canadiens, go Habs, and got involved in football when I went into high school. I went to Miller High School, where hockey wasn't necessarily the big thing. It was football or nothing. So a whole lot of us hockey players started doing both. I was fortunate to have some really high-level, high-quality coaches that really inspired not only the team to do well in the sport, but to do well in life and give back. And then once we all graduated, there was a significant amount of us who began doing different things, either through team administration or coaching. And then through the course of that, coaching minor football and high school football, a bit of taste of junior and university football. And then in 1999, the Regina Rams announced they're moving to the university level. And a couple of us got together and decided that that's a big void to leave in the historic levels of how the Regina Rams were such a model of a successful franchise in junior football that it would be quite a significant void. So we decided to start what was then known as the Regina Prairie Thunder, and have now become the Regina Thunder. And through time, being on part of that administration and directors, became part of the Prairie Football Conference leadership, became president of the Prairie Football Conference in 2011, and subsequently also joined the Canadian Junior Football League Board, and in the same year, and I've been part of it ever since. So that's long-winded.
Yeah, that's amazing. I know you have almost a 25-year career there. So it's incredible what you've been able to do across football and, like you said, other sports growing up. That's amazing. I can also attest that hockey was a huge thing. I started playing when I was 2 in the small town rink in Sedley, which I'm sure you also played in at one time or another. And grew up playing with the boys, and thankfully that's kind of how I continued. But that's amazing that you transitioned and you were a multi-sport athlete there. For folks that don't know, and obviously this is an open podcast to lots of different people, do you want to just walk through a little bit more in detail what the Prairie Football Conference is and how it specifically fits into CJFL, just a bit broader than what you already touched on?
Mm-hmm. Well, the league itself had a variety of different titles, but extending back to the late 1800s, Canadian junior football established in 1883 out east on Ontario, Quebec, and such. On the prairies, it was a little bit later, late 1800s, early 1900s. And you'll start seeing competition for what is now known as the Canadian Bowl, but overall the national championship between the East and the West as far back as 1900, 1901. I've always been a big fan of the history of the sport, hockey, baseball, football, indeed. And so those kind of connections, the longevity of it, the value of it, when you're reading old articles from Saskatoon or Calgary or Regina from 1948, and it's talking about the benefit and the goals and the missions of all the individual teams and organizations, still maintain today. Our goal is to provide a foundation for young people to become pillars of society and grow into strong contributing citizens, and then the sport being second. So the history of the game of Canadian junior football is really quite lengthy, exceeds, I believe, any other sport in Canada, and an ongoing Canadian championship with the exception of the Second World War and a year in COVID, longest running national championship as well. So through that, there's been many variations across Canada, from having as many as 30 teams at one point, different cities at different time. Winnipeg at one time had 4 different teams. Calgary had 2. Edmonton had 2. BC, every major center had a team. So currently across Canada, there's 19 teams. On the prairies, we have 6. Winnipeg, Regina, Saskatoon, Calgary, and 2 in Edmonton, the Huskies and the Wildcats. BC has 7 teams currently, and Ontario has 6 teams as well, and just most recently had an expansion team in Sault Ste. Marie. So that's a bit of a biography, I guess, of the league and the history.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So obviously you've been involved for a very long time. Did you ever picture when you started getting involved with Prairie Football Conference that you would see yourself running the conference, or did it kind of sneak up on you, one volunteer role at a time?
Well, this ain't going to be too humble, but I definitely did see myself running it someday. Lots of trials and tribulations, but it had always been kind of my persona, I guess, of always needing to take that next step and contribute, and then I just learned from experience previously in the minor leagues and the high school leagues that when you keep taking steps forward, you know where you're going to wind up. So when it came time with the entering into the junior, it was really unknown to us. And initially there was a lot of folks that were second guessing that if we would be able to sustain a team, having 2 teams in Regina. We're one of the smallest market on the prairies, and one of the smaller ones in Canada to supply 2 teams. But being fully aware of the strength of our minor program in Saskatchewan in all the centers, with Current, Estevan, Moose Jaw, Saskatoon, Regina, and so on and so forth, Prince Albert, that we had a fundamental base that was strong enough and equal to other provinces. I recall in 1996 going to a Football Canada meeting, and one of the questions that were asked as we're doing our icebreaker introductory circle check sort of thing was, tell us about the sport in your province. And at that time, Saskatchewan had over 108 different teams that participated in tackle football, which included minor football, high school, junior, university. And the thing that was a bit unique at the time was that not only did we have 12-man football, but what really propped those numbers up was that we also had 9-man football and 6-man football. And it used to be big in our province that we'd have a team from Texas come up every year to compete in what was called the Can-Am Bowl, and it was a 6-man football tournament, and it rotated amongst smaller towns and villages throughout the province, and it was really quite a hype scenario where almost like what you'd see in the movies about Texas, where they have a town of 2,000 on Friday night, population swells to 5,000 because people come in to watch the high school football game, and there'd be some of the centers of the population would be 500, and with people coming in to watch, it would double the population. And so really quite a rich history of football in the province, but also in our small centers. So yeah, when we were getting involved, the few of us that had started, we kind of knew that at some point one of us would be here.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And obviously, being a part of it from the very beginning, I'm sure your day in the life has changed a lot. What does your current day or week in the life of a Prairie Football Conference president look like? And what do you think would surprise people about your day-to-day?
Well, I'm not sure it surprised a lot of people, but as with any director, board, administrative role, there is just a lot of boring administrative duties that need to be done. Communications, as far as making sure people are aware of a variety of different things. Latest rule changes is more of an annual thing, so that might be a hot item for a few weeks in the spring or late winter. As now a lot of the teams, if not all the teams, have either held or are holding their spring camp this weekend. So there's a lot of information. Coaches and executive members of each organization getting some clarification on rules and protocols, registration requirements and criteria. So a lot of it will become just that mundane sending out consecutive or consistent messaging about rules, criteria, policies, and protocols. It really gets rolling once the season starts. So in the off season, we'll meet as an executive monthly. So we have a bit of a hiatus after the Canadian Bowl is concluded in mid-November, usually the Remembrance Day weekend, until the middle of January. And then starting January's teams will start doing some off-season workouts. There'll be lots of teams will have their annual general meetings. There'll be new executive members appointed in different teams, and then they'll be trying to catch up and refresh. And so they'll be, knocking on the door to find out what are the rules around registration, as an example. How many players can we have a letter of intent signed to? This team over there is trying to recruit my guy, and that's wrong. So there's a lot of arbitrating and mediation in the off season. But the reason you get involved is for when the young athletes start participating. So the spring camp gets the juices flowing, and then there'll be a bit of a lull until BC starts early the second week or late first week of July. They have a 10-game schedule. And then Ontario and the Prairies, we have an 8-game schedule. So the training camps will usually start towards the end of July. And then by the first or second week of August, that's when the games start. And then that's when it'll almost be a daily interaction of discussing any issues that we can proactively identify and solve before games. But most likely it's from the operations of the game, where we're doing either some discipline meetings, reviewing of statistics, selecting the weekly players of the week, or in essence, the conference all-stars for that week. And then we start almost immediately, once the season starts, start prepping for playoffs, and because although it's a 3-month season, playoffs, August, September, October is when seasons end. Playoffs start at the end of October. It just it zipped by. So we've learned from experience to get ourselves ahead of the game earlier on. And lots of registrations. Each team will register between 70, 75 players to 100, maybe 110. And then each team will need to roster only 65 players on a weekly basis if they're hosting a game, a home team. If they're traveling, then they need to roster 46 players. So there's a lot of just that paperwork. And then primarily problem solving. So, a team will have an issue, whether it's a referee call, their belief that another team might not be playing fairly, or, that plethora, a wide range of concerns that coaches and executive members may have given week to week, depending on whether they win or lose, those kind of things. So.
Yep, that's awesome. Thank you. And when you get into that, like you said, that very busy time when, operations is in full swing, what would you say is kind of the biggest challenge that you face as the president?
Oh, it's probably when it's coming down to disciplinary action, because it is a intense sport. It's a collision sport. Players train all year long to perform at the top of their physical abilities. But there's also times like when we're asking them to defy the laws of physics, to go full speed all the time, and yet when the whistle blows, you need to stop immediately, despite what inertia may happen. And that's when there'll usually be roughness, unnecessary roughness calls, objectionable conduct calls, those kind of things. So it's really difficult trying to balance what you see on the film, the act itself, and the intent. So at times earlier on in when we were doing this, the vice presidents of the Prairie Football Conference and myself, we spent a lot of time looking at the film, and things appear to be quite black and white. But with more and more experience, you start to look at different trends, body language prior to what would be considered offenses. We develop different levels of criteria, not to interpret the rules, but to apply the rules more appropriately. Sometimes, as an example, it's popular to punch the football out, and coaches will spend minutes, if not hours, drilling how to punch a football out. However, when you watch it on film and somebody's trying to punch a football out, it could look like they're punching the athlete. So you really have gotten to a keen eye where you can identify not so much the action of the arm, but where the player's eyes are looking. And if they're looking at a football and punching at a football, they're probably punching at a football. So the most difficult thing about that is the high chance that you might be wrong. And you don't want to punish people unnecessarily, and you definitely don't want to, miss something that's deserving of an action of some sort.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great segue kind of into my next question I want to ask you. Obviously, players are fairly young, like ages 18 to 22-ish, and lots of them are living away from home for the first time, or, year after year, they're living away from home. How does that shape the way that the conference approaches safety?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. We've really taken steps in the last few years to combine not only safety being the physical aspect of the game, but leaning more and more towards the mental aspect of the game. Things such as moving away from home, being on your own, trying to operate and function within the common stresses of daily life, and then come to football practice. And we want to be able to provide, a structure that provides a bit of social support, provide the opportunity for young people to develop abilities, capabilities, and confidence so that they can go out in the world and contribute. One of the things that we really look at for safety first and foremost is having a game that's have a culture of the game that has mutual respect and provides opportunity for athletes to exchange and be as assertive, at times aggressive as they need to be within the confines of the rules. The opportunity to succeed within the parameters of the rules and expectations of the policies and protocols and traditions without going over the top. So when we're looking at safety, there's quite a few different elements of what we need to look at. Our awareness of the individual organizational culture has grown over the last decade and so, about that you can't have an environment where it's littered with I don't like calling it old school thought, because old school would have been when I played, and I had some really good coaches, and we were taught to respect your opponent, treat everybody with dignity, sportsmanship, those kind of things. However, back then too, there's always those outliers that it was kind of that us against the world kind of thing. Everybody's out to get you, so you got to get them before they get you. Those kind of things. So as a conference and as a national league, we talk constantly about the need to collaborate, cooperate, treat each other with respect and dignity. I know with the conference presidents from Ontario, BC, the Prairies, we've really developed a working relationship that is based on respect and dignity. So when we're having inter-conference issues, like recruiting is a big thing that, when you asked me what was one of the biggest thorns on my side, I should have said recruiting violations. But we developed a working mechanism on a national level that allows us to solve these, if not all the time, the majority of the time.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. So obviously getting into safety a little bit deeper and maybe more specifically with how you guys have been working with us at HEADCHECK for a while now. From your perspective and your seat being kind of the top of the conference, what do you see as the value of having every team within the conference on the same system for concussion protocol execution, rather than maybe having each team or each program doing its own thing?
I think it's the high expectation, the significant level of the criteria that we want to reach. Each different team within this organization alone would be suspect to that leadership, the organizational leadership, as to what their expectation is. I'm sad to say I'm from the era. I had some great coaches. We had some great athletic therapists. We had extensive amount of people that were taking care of us from the physical standpoint. However, when I first started coaching, I was young. I was 20 years old. I thought anything to do with a concussion was just a matter of, get some water in you and get back out there and play. I personally never had a concussion playing football. I did have a concussion once playing hockey, but the majority of the concussions I've got, I don't know how many I've had, but I had a couple playing baseball. And it wasn't about being hit or anything like that. It was more about trying to be a major leaguer and laying out and diving for balls that were outside of my reach, and then whipping and banging my head on the ground or the turf. On the prairies here out by Vibank, the pastures and the baseball fields are all the same. And on small town sports, when you're diving and hitting that sun-dried pasture, or as we called it, left field, it hurt. And then as through that, the knowledge on concussions was so limited at the time. As I got more involved, and I remember coaching and, kids coming off and saying they had headaches and they seen stars, and you just need to dump a bucket of cold water on your head and that'll bring you to, and then off you go. And, just how significantly wrong that was. I remember misdiagnosing concussions of being heat exhaustion, sunstroke, things like that there. My willingness or wanting to get more educated about concussions came as I got a little bit older, more mature as a coach. I coached one young fellow who was 14, and I remember his dad telling me he already had 8 concussions, so he can't have any more. So I have to do my best to protect him. And I don't know if that was accurate. I don't know how many he had, but I had no idea how I was going to protect him as a coach. And he was a super athlete. And then the pressures of winning at all costs versus the nature of this kid, it was really kind of a crossroads for me personally. I chose to take care of the athlete, and would bench the kid a little bit longer. The mother really appreciated it. The dad not so much. He was on me all the time. Mm-hmm. Why his boy isn't playing? Well, he only had the concussion last week. That's gone. And so and he was pretty high up in the football world in Saskatchewan here. So in order for me to get an argument, I started researching a little bit more. And in the early 90s, there wasn't a ton of research. We didn't have Google, as you know. So I'd be at the university, pulling up things and as much. And it was just absolutely eye-opening about the lack of information out there. Anyways, so what really I had an interest in that and believe that we got to take care of the athletes. If we're going to ask them to dedicate all their time to our team and our organizations, we got to dedicate as much as we can. What really lit the fuel under my butt even more so was when I had a 9-year-old who decided he wanted to play football. And my wife and his mother, of course, not wanting anything to do with it. So, and the fear of concussions, because that's when the movie came out, Concussion came out. And so I started digging into it again a little bit more. We had more technology that allowed us to dig into more wide variety of concussions. I used myself, said, I've never had a concussion playing football. But those arguments, they don't really carry any weight unless you have something substantial to bring behind it. So that is where my dedication and commitment to HEADCHECK came about, because when I heard about the program, I can't remember what the conference was, but I did attend a conference, CCMI, Concussion Management. These folks are from Toronto anyway. So I attended the conference, and the information was really good. It was the wealth of information that I had gotten in one conference, as opposed to years of my own personal research, was really quite helpful. The thing I took away from it is about a concussion healing properly has a very strong positive outcome. Conversely, just like anything else, if you start walking on a broken leg before it's healed, you're going to hurt your broken leg, and it's going to get worse and worse. So with that little snippet, I met Harrison. He presented what HEADCHECK had. I was overwhelmed with what the program and the organization of HEADCHECK Health offered. I explained my position of what I was hoping to do. Not necessarily my vision, but what had become the vision of all of us, and how HEADCHECK can help in. And it hit every box. I was blown away. Plus the fact, the introduction and the tutelage and consultation with Dr. Sonata was something that just blew me away. It was quite a push with the teams. We still had some organizations where some of the voting members or presidents may have been a bit in denial, maybe didn't want to flip that stone. So initially, I built up a bit of a following, and we were able to convince the presidents. The cost was on everybody's mind, because junior football, it's not a lot of extra money floating around, so everybody was concerned about that. And then through a meeting, more than a meeting, a few meetings with Harrison and such, which is I came into a conclusion, and the vice presidents as well, about we can't afford not to do this. The trends, the registrations of football in the minors leagues was dipping. And my belief was we can't ignore it. We need to, the only way you defeat rumors with fact. So let's get as much information as we can, and let's utilize it to our advantage. And it will never take away the fear of concussion. My boy is 19 and he's now playing junior football. And I get the willies watching some drills and some games, and you know, I'm as big a proponent for the benefits of playing football as there is. So those that are on the fence, I can really understand, empathize with what they're feeling. So one of the benefits, or a benefit, the first couple of years we got this information, we presented it. People that would nod their heads and say, "Oh, this is wonderful," and then do nothing with the information. And then the next year we'd do it the same. And so it became at our annual general meetings where HEADCHECK, Harrison, Darcy would forward to me these fantastic, you know what they are, those end of season reports with speaking points and recommendations. And the first couple of years, like, it was more presentation, more fluff, I think, from the presidents receiving the information. However, once we got a couple of years, 3 years data, 4 years data, we were able to identify trends, ups and downs. Part of it, identifying the teams that have been successful in meeting the protocols, the criteria, versus those that weren't. A little bit of public humiliation goes a long way. So the teams that were having zero compliance, year 2, year 3 particularly, started getting up there and became some of our most successful users. One quick story that is just recent. So this would have been our 5th year of data that we were able to utilize. Last year at the Prairie Football Conference annual general meeting, we had identified there was one team that led the league, led the nation actually, in concussions, and by a significant number. Some years almost double. Their number remained consistent from year to year, 14, 15, 16. So at the end of our meeting or presentation last year, I was able to sit down with the president, the team manager, and one of the executive members, and have that data present and say, we've talked about this. The first year we kind of thought it was over reporting on perhaps of the athletic therapists. The next year we kind of masked it a little bit by saying, well, they're just doing a really good job and all the other teams aren't doing a good job. That's why theirs are higher. But then by year 3, as the other teams were, getting better at entering their information, and this team had that same consistent, then there's something there. So by year 4, it was time to sit down and say, hey, we need to identify something, to break down on the reports that we get talked about, position athletes, whether they're getting hurt in practice, whether they're getting hurt in games. The thing that was consistent was the amount of concussions that were occurring in practice. and at a position,
Yeah.
the defensive line. So through that conversation, so I talked to them and just, essentially said, you got to have the conversation and you got to have it with your coaches because we can't ignore this any longer. And they did.
Yeah.
A year later, they cut the concussions in half. They had identified that the D-line coach was utilizing a drill that had been around for a long time, was more of a see how tough you are type of drill versus any practical game skill development. And they stopped using it. And the coach, I never even thought about it. Yeah, I got no problem changing that drill. So they stopped using it. And this year, coincidentally, their concussions dropped by half. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So from that perspective, and the money that everybody was scared to spend about 5 years ago, nobody even looks at anymore. It's not even questioned. So when we get the invoice from HEADCHECK, it's just a matter of forwarding it to our treasurer and the payment made. So we started that on the prairies, and then slowly it evolved. BC has really got up onto it now. They've really taken the bull by the horn, so to speak. I think this is their 4th year utilizing HEADCHECK. Ontario was a little bit delayed in jumping on board. So I believe that this would be their 3rd year or just completed their 3rd year. And so they're learning to interpret that data as well now. So one of the things that is expanded, my role has been presenting it not only on the prairies, but at the Canadian Junior Football League annual general meeting as well. And then we got questions and answers and all that kind of stuff. And now that I think of it, Maddie, I'll put the pressure on you. Next year, our annual general meeting is in Ontario. I mentioned to Harrison when we have that, it'd be nice if somebody came and attended, either as an observer or maybe even a presenter, or take some questions and answers. So I don't know if you would be that person, or Darcy, or
more than happy. Yeah, or Darcy, or myself, or maybe both of us. That would be great. I know we're that would be awesome. We could definitely collaborate and put something together for that. So I have one last question for you. Definitely, that was fantastic to hear that personal kind of reference and story, just in terms of how the metrics have helped safety across the entire league. But my last kind of thought I want to ask you is, where do you see junior football in Canada going, and what do you personally hope to leave this conference with?
Where do I see it going? I think the overall culture development of having a sport, intense, aggressive sport. It's been said many times that football is a collision sport. Lots of emotion, lots of emotionality. Maintaining a culture of respect, dignity, a caring environment, which doesn't necessarily seem congruent with the whole aspect of going out there and knocking the bejeebies out of each other, but you can still do so in a respectful manner. Part of that as an organization and leaders is ensuring that not only the physical aspect of our young people is maintained and respected, but also more and more the mental health piece of it. We've talked the last couple of years on a national level about committing some time, energy, and if need be, dollars, which more likely than not will be, in order to get out there with a little bit more awareness. I mean, there's all sorts of statistics. The Conference Board of Canada identifies that 1 in 5 Canadians have a mental health issue. From my information and research and my professional life, I believe that it's higher. It might be as high as 3 in 5. And we can't ignore this as much. Concussion management and protocols and mental health are two different things, but coincide so easily. Not necessarily a perfect dovetail fit as far as what the goals of each is, but the overall thought about health, mental health, physical health is definitely there. So our next steps will be to getting out, educating, reducing the stigma. In sports culture, mental health is often seen, or mental health issues is often seen as a weakness. And we got to get rid of that thinking. I think more and more folks, athletic therapists across the country, are definitely on board. We just need, from an organizational level, get organizations 100% behind it, which it will take some time, and it will take a little bit of convincing. Not that these people are cold-hearted folks. It's just we're dealing with decades, if not centuries, of express and deal with it on your own behind. Don't bring it up in public and those kind of things. And I think through that, I mean, that's a goal that will be big enough for all of us to tackle. And we got to start someplace. I know some of the Coaches Association of Canada, NCAA in America. I know the London Beefeaters have a mental health consultant, the same one that is working with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So people are identifying this. I think bringing it under, or at least putting the offer out there to bring it under one umbrella will only help promote it and provide the understanding and awareness that will be needed.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree. Mental and physical health are equal and interchangeable, and it definitely affects the athlete across all levels, right? So, yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. I just wanted to take a moment here to say I appreciate your time today, and we definitely appreciate working with the Prairie Football Conference and with yourself, and we look forward to continuing to work together and make the league safer as a whole. So thank you for your time. It's definitely appreciated today.
Yeah, thank you, and thank everybody at HEADCHECK. You made us a better league, that's for sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.